I used to be a guy who was experiencing the world, and now I feel like the world and the universe experiencing a guy.
The man who once made the world erupt with laughter now lives behind a silence few can comprehend. Jim Carrey's journey, from unstoppable energy to quiet retreat, hides a truth more haunting than any role he's ever played. Beneath the fame, there lies a story of love lost, battles unseen, and strength found in the wreckage. What happened to the man who could make anyone smile, but struggled to find his own? His tragedy isn't what the world saw on screen. It's what it never saw at all. The unseen weight behind the smile. Jim Carrey's face has been a beacon of joy for millions. Yet that ever-present smile concealed a profound and persistent struggle. Behind the electric energy and rubber-faced comedy was a man bearing wounds no laughter could fully mask. Years of hardship had carved deep shadows beneath the spotlight, setting the stage for a life where pain and humor existed inseparably. This was not just the journey of a comedian, it was the journey of a soul fighting to keep alive a fragile light. From early on, Jim learned that smiling was less a sign of happiness and more a shield against a harsh world. The laughs he inspired often hid the loneliness and pain he endured privately. It was a paradox that few outside his inner circle could understand. How the very person who sparked joy could also carry such heavy burdens. Every standing ovation was layered with a quiet ache that never truly left him. Those closest to Jim describe a man who could instantly brighten a room, yet wrestle with darkness beneath the surface. Depression, loss, and heartbreak were constant companions, even as his career soared. The laughter that fueled him simultaneously drained him, as if each joke was a demand to hide the turmoil within. This unseen weight shaped not only his work, but the very essence of who he was. What made Carrey's story so compelling was the fragile balance he maintained. A narrative of extremes where light and shadow danced continually, his humor became a language of survival, an artful way to translate his most painful experiences into something universal and relatable. But even in the midst of global fame, the question lingered. Who was the man behind the smile after the cameras stopped rolling? Even with the laughter, Jim's life was characterized by hardships that very few would be able to endure. He lost both his parents before they could see their son finally succeeding. He went through a long period of depression, and he experienced love affairs that all ended in pain. Still, he kept pushing through most of the time without anyone noticing, as if through his silence he was doing the deadening of his hurts that was actually part of his job description. Perhaps the most tragic thing in Jim Carrey's legacy is the contrast between the public's laughter and his personal suffering. His story shows the duality of fame in that it can both hide and reveal, and that it is possible for the sound of applause to totally cover the noises made by someone calling for help. As we look back to his beginnings, the roots of this unseen weight start to take shape, buried deep in those early years of struggle and sacrifice. Rising from poverty to purpose. Jim Carrey's life began far from Hollywood's glitz, in the cold and gray town of Newmarket, Ontario, Canada, where his family struggled just to get by. Born as the youngest of 4 children, his childhood was shadowed by financial hardship and a household filled with quiet despair. His father, Percy Carrey, had once been a talented saxophonist, filling dance halls with music, but years of unpaid bills forced him out of work, crushing the family's fragile stability. Meanwhile, Jim's mother, Kathleen, battled her own demons, grappling with illness and addiction that slowly eroded her health and spirit. Her constant talks of death at the dinner table left a young Jim not with fear, but with purpose. He became her designated source of laughter and hope. Even as she faded, he tried desperately to hold on, believing if he could make her smile, maybe she would stay. The family's nightmare turned upside down when Pamela became pregnant, and things got even harder for them. They shared a Volkswagen van with another family, and Jim would spend his days cleaning toilets and mopping floors. His little hands were cracking and red from the cold water and strong detergents. They were always hungry, and the cold nights in the van were almost unbearable. But they could not crush his spirit, as he remained tough and determined not to be a poor boy. It was so hard that Jim still managed to see the funny side of the situation. At the age of 15, he suffered a public shaming when one of his early comedy acts was greeted with boos. Nevertheless, he would not give up, and he continued to perform, motivated by something beyond applause. "You can fail at what you don't want," he remembered his father telling him, "so why not take a chance on what you love?" Those words turned into a mantra for him, whispering his way through very long nights of doubt and loneliness. When Jim, the teenager, finally left home, he barely had anything with him besides a second-hand suitcase, a little money, and a solid dream. The journey from Canada to Los Angeles was not only a geographic one, but also a spiritual one between despair and hope, where every mile was thinly stretched between the two extremes of the human condition, hence hunger and hope. He reached Hollywood not as the star the world was going to see very soon, but as a young man who had come to confront the unfeeling streets and the tough realities. Those first days in Los Angeles were characterized by sleeping in the car, taking any job that came along, and facing a never-ending series of rejections. He practiced his lines in the reflections from diners' windows, concocted jokes deep into the night, and held on to every little sign of hope that he might eventually be listened to. In those years, Carrey learned to joke not only for the sake of others, but also as a way to cope with his own suffering, thereby turning the phenomenon into a craft of necessity and of the greatness of drudgery. As his career began to rise, the personal battles that had shaped him remained close, shaping every choice and every step forward. The story of his ascent cannot be told without honoring the struggles that preceded and, in many ways, propelled it, meteoric rise, and lost connections. By the early 1990s, Jim Carrey's hard work began to pay off in remarkable ways, transforming him from a struggling stand-up comedian to a worldwide sensation. His breakout came with the sketch show In Living Color, where his characters brought fresh energy and wild unpredictability to television. Almost overnight, he became a household name, embodying a new kind of electric comedy that captured the imagination of millions. The years 1994 and 1995 catapulted Jim into a league few actors reach in their entire careers. Films like Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, The Mask, and Dumb and Dumber solidified his status, earning hundreds of millions worldwide. He shattered box office records and became the first actor ever paid $20 million for a single film. It seemed as though the world could not get enough of his humor and charisma. Yet amid this dazzling success, the personal costs grew heavy and real. Jim's mother passed away in 1991, just weeks before his big break, never witnessing the triumph he had so long chased. Later, as he reached the peak of his fame, his father's death in 1994 dealt another crushing blow. Jim was forced to board a plane not for a premiere, but for a funeral, underscoring the bitter irony of achievement without those he longed to share it with. This gap between public triumph and private grief haunted him. Despite being adored around the world, Jim often felt isolated and misunderstood. The very fame that elevated him also created distance from the people he loved most. Success brought applause, but also an aching loneliness, an emptiness that no amount of wealth or adulation could fill. Around this time, critics and audiences began to react with complexity. Some projects, like The Cable Guy, were commercially disappointing and received backlash, while others pushed harder into deeper themes. Jim's intense approach to comedy and truth sometimes clashed with Hollywood's expectations, leading to a tension between his artistic drive and the industry's demands. Still, Carrey refused to soften his edge. His performances in Liar, Liar and The Truman Show revealed layers of pain beneath the humor. The latter won him a Golden Globe and mixed critical acclaim with a profound personal resonance, portraying a man trapped by his own constructed reality, a metaphor not lost on Jim himself. As his star rose, weeks and months away from loved ones multiplied. The man who once performed to make his mother laugh was now performing for millions, but the laughter often felt hollow. Despite this, he kept moving forward, fueled by a mix of defiance and the lingering promise that his sacrifices would one day bring meaning beyond the stage. The story of Jim Carrey's meteoric rise is inseparable from the story of what he lost on the way fame opened doors, but also closed many hearts, foreshadowing the deeper struggles that would follow as he grappled not just with his career, but with the very cost of survival itself. The echoes of loss continued to shape him, even as he reached heights few ever dreamt of seeing. This delicate dance between success and sorrow set the tone for the chapters to come, where love, loss, and healing would redefine Jim Carrey's legacy beyond the laughter, love lost in the spotlight. Jim Carrey's personal life has been defined by deep yet fragile relationships, each revealing a man searching for stability amid chaos. His first marriage, to Melissa Weimer in 1987, was built on struggle but rooted in sincerity. Together, they welcomed their daughter, Jane, whose laughter filled their modest apartment during long nights of rehearsals and uncertainty. But as Jim's fame exploded, success quietly unraveled the life they built. Long hours, distance, and exhaustion replaced the intimacy they once shared. Their divorce came not from anger, but inevitability. A quiet surrender to lives pulled apart by circumstance, Jane remained mostly with her mother as Jim's career consumed him. Though adored by millions, he often felt isolated, missing milestones in his daughter's life. Years later, when Jane appeared on American Idol in 2012, he watched with pride and regret, aware that fame had cost him moments that mattered most. Love returned briefly in 1996 when Jim married actress Lauren Holly. Their union offered a fleeting calm, two people seeking peace in a world that refused to give it. But relentless media attention and the pressures of celebrity life turned their happiness into strain. Lauren described feeling trapped by the constant intrusion, while Jim battled to balance his fame with his longing for normalcy. After just 10 months, they quietly parted ways. No scandal, only fatigue. Through each relationship, Jim carried the same ache. The harder he worked to make the world laugh, the further he drifted from his own peace. Their marriage ended, after just 10 months, without scandal, but with the acceptance of exhaustion. Lauren wore the wedding ring not as a sign of regret, but as a hint of peace that she had briefly found and lost. Jim later pondered that some souls enter your life to give you a taste of tranquility, even if they cannot remain with you forever. The picture of them sharing a laugh on set has continued to be one of the final delicate glimpses of a love that was marred by circumstance. In 1999, Jim took shelter in a different relationship and got quietly engaged to Renee Zellweger. The bond they shared was of pure kindness under the radar, but as Jim's career started to soar again, their engagement faded away. Jim referred to their timing as poor, two spirits who met amidst storms but were not ready to fight them off together yet. He kept the engagement ring in a drawer, a tiny monument to love that was lost to the hard and cruel demands of life and stardom. The most famous chapter in the life of Jim Carrey can be said to be his romance with Jenny McCarthy, among others. It was indeed a spontaneous and joyful connection that started in 2005. Their bond was more in terms of such daily happenings as a plane writing "Jay loves Jay" across the skies, shared laughter, and a steady domestic life with the autistic son of Jenny, Evan. Jim was given the label of a gentle, patient man who found new depths of love in caring and support. However, even this brightness was eclipsed by the burden of the returning shadows. Jim's life was once again invaded by depression, which made the bright moments turn into small conversations and a distance that was ever widening. Their quiet separation after 5 years was another chapter in their lives, closed without any bitterness, but only a soft memory kept in mutual respect. Beneath the weight of these intimate losses, Jim sought new ways to live and heal, turning to artistry and solitude as instruments of survival, retreat into art and healing. When fame grew deafening and grief unbearable, Jim Carrey found refuge in painting and meditation. The canvas became his sanctuary, a silent language of healing where pain turned into color and sorrow into light. Through art, he stopped performing for others and began simply existing, transforming turmoil into creation. Nights often stretched into early morning as Jim painted in solitude. Rather than escape his emotions, he faced them, letting each brushstroke become a form of prayer. His studio walls filled with haunting faces, half lit by hope, shadowed by sorrow, mirroring the emotions he could never fully voice. The death of his partner, Catriona White, deepened this artistic retreat. Her loss, magnified by public scrutiny and legal battles, wounds that fame could not soothe. Yet even in that darkness, Jim found a way to honor her through color, turning pain into quiet remembrance. His paintings whispered what words could not, love persisting beyond loss. Years of physical strain from film work added to his challenges. Chronic pain and injuries became reminders of a career built on pushing limits. Instead of resisting, he embraced gentler living, yoga, meditation, and mindful movement, finding balance between endurance and acceptance. His retreat was not withdrawal, but transformation. Away from cameras, Jim redefined visibility, not as stardom, but as authenticity. In interviews, he began to speak of suffering and compassion with rare honesty. "Pain doesn't mean you're broken," he said. "It means you're still alive enough to feel." The words resonated with millions who saw in him not just a comedian, but a survivor. Jim's art became a private dialogue, often donated anonymously to support healing causes. His humility reflected a man who long ago learned to smile for reasons deeper than applause. Surrounded by close friends and quiet faith, he discovered peace in simplicity. Each brushstroke a meditation, each silence a step toward wholeness. From tragedy emerged renewal. Jim Carrey's journey through art reminds us that greatness isn't measured in fame, but in the grace to endure, to create, and to keep loving through the pain. In the silence that followed, a new chapter would eventually unfold, one where legacy is drawn not only in laughter, but in the quiet strength of the human spirit. Legacy beyond laughter. At 63, Jim Carrey's life stands as a tapestry of brilliance, pain, and rebirth. The man who once electrified millions with manic joy now lives in quiet reflection, far from Hollywood's glare. His legacy isn't just his box office triumphs, but the courage to heal, redefine himself, and live with grace after enduring so much loss. His Brentwood home, filled with paintings and light, reflects this transformation. Each brushstroke tells of his battles with grief and hope. A silver saxophone from his father rests nearby, a symbol of love, regret, and inherited dreams. The house feels less like a monument to fame and more like a sanctuary where silence and creation coexist. Here, Carrey turns the residue of pain into art and compassion. The hectic times of being on movie sets and having cameras around everywhere are over now. The mornings are always for meditation and yoga, the afternoons for painting and taking a stroll through his Maui retreat. He was once known for his lively energy, but now he walks with serenity as his guide, not turning the silence into a void, but rather claiming it as peace. That is his due. Carrey's quiet passage continues to be. Though he might not be in the limelight, he has, to some extent, always been very generous, but his donations to hospitals for children, mental health treatment, and the environment have been large, although occasionally hidden. His art sales sometimes go to these causes, but he refuses to be made known in this regard, which is a quality of humbleness that characterizes this new stage in his life. The therapist's acceptance of his issues and his openness about them have given many the opportunity to struggle with similar issues and find a way through them. He speaks in a lot of ways about the human condition, and among them, he urges us that the power is not in suppressing pain, but in changing it. His father's counsel, "You can fail at what you don't want, so you might as well take a chance on what you love," is still his enduring guiding, resonating for the dreamers all over the world. Jim Carrey's transformation from comedy superstar to thinker artist indicates that the measure of a person is not in the currency of fame, but in the values of their strength, kindness, and honesty. His jolly laughter has lessened, but his shine is still there, the testimony that the soul can conquer darkness and turn it to beauty again. The kid who slept in a van is now a serene man, and his journey from being a loser to being a winner is indeed a clear indication that healing is also an art. Jim Carrey's story reminds us that behind every smile may lie a struggle worth respecting. His journey shows that resilience and kindness can outshine pain and fame. If his life touched you, please like this video, subscribe for more stories that inspire and heal, and don't forget to watch the next video on your screen. It might just move you in ways you don't expect.